Dad ditched me BC. He wanted to be a better dad to his favorite stepdaughter, but now he's shocked BC. I moved out and he didn't even notice until this happened. My grandma ripped him apart. My father does not pay more attention to me than he does to my stepsister, and it's all because she came into his life at a very vulnerable time when his new wife passed away in an accident, which was my stepmom. And yeah, she had a stepdaughter, so my dad just evolved this whole world that revolves around her now. Well, get this, I broke my leg. It was an accident, but now I'm lying in a cold hospital bed, and my father can't even show up because he's too busy talking to my stepsister. Well, you know what? I decided, you know what, Dad, we can play this game. I'm going to tell Grandma all about this, and we know how much Grandma controls you, don't we? You know those moments when you're lying in a hospital bed, staring up at the blank white ceiling and wondering how your life got so messed up? Yeah, I'm right in the middle of that. Maybe it's the pain meds kicking in, or maybe it's the fact that my father, who I thought would be here when I needed him the most, decides to abandon me for what, the millionth time. But it's not just the broken leg or the hospital room that's bothering me. The thing is that I still can't believe that I'm lying here, helpless and alone, while my dad is just busy playing father to my stupid stepsister, Stacy. Let me give you guys a bit of context. My name is Denise, I'm 21, a college student, and currently trying to figure out how I'm supposed to make it through this mess. First, let me tell you how I actually landed in this situation. I didn't see the car coming when I crossed the street last week. One minute I was walking home from class, and the next thing I knew, I was on the ground with my leg twisted in ways it should not be. It wasn't even my fault. Some guy ran a red light, and now I'm stuck in the hospital, trying to deal with not just the physical pain but everything else that's got me absolutely falling apart. After the incident, the first person I thought to call was my dad. I wasn't asking for much, just for him to come to the hospital to be here for me, maybe give me some moral support since I was feeling pretty dang helpless. But when I called him, I got the same lousy excuse that I've been getting for some time now about how he was ditching me for his favorite daughter, Stacy. He tells me that he would not be able to come since he was leaving with Stacy the next day for the mental peace retreat that he had already paid half the money for. You would think that Stacy, being a full 23-year-old adult, would be fine on her own. But no, my dad said that he promised her he would accompany her on the retreat, and she really needed him around. As for how she would just handle everything alone? Yeah, his stepdaughter needed him, but his real daughter, who just broke her darn leg, should be what, fine on her own. You'd think his words, always prioritizing Stacy over me, would hurt me less with time, but they don't. It's like every time I reach out, hoping that maybe this time he'll prioritize me, he ends up choosing Stacy. Well, the worst part is, I could really use his help right now, not just emotionally, but financially. Hospital bills aren't exactly cheap, and as a college student, my savings aren't much to write home about, so I swallow my pride and ask him if he could help me out with the money just to cover the hospital expenses. Can you guess what he said? He told me he only had enough money to pay for the travel and the remaining retreat fees. He also pointed out how this retreat was really important for Stacy's mental peace and that I should understand my sister needed this money more. Yeah, here we go again with Stacy's mental health. Let me tell you a bit about it since we're on the topic. Stacy has been faking anxiety attacks since the day she stepped into our lives. It's her favorite trick in the book to get anything she wants, just to manipulate Dad into doing whatever she wants. Every time I try to talk to him about something important, she conveniently breaks down, and Dad rushes to her aid like she's the center of the universe. It's infuriating. And now, instead of being here when I actually need him, he's off playing hero again. It's disgusting. I guess I should have seen it coming. Dad's been this way ever since he married my stepmom, Claudia. I still remember when everything was different before my mom got sick. Here's a little backstory for you guys to understand the dynamic of my family better and the reason why it hurts so darn much right now. My parents had an arranged marriage set up by my grandma, Jean, who's basically the matriarch of the family. Dad never really loved Mom, not in the way a husband should love a wife, anyway. He just went along with the marriage because he didn't want to make Grandma mad. She's rich, and Dad's been living off her money for years. He's never had a real job and has just been coasting through life on the allowance she gives him. Classic, right? Everything changed when Mom got sick. Dad was hardly around, and when he was distant. It wasn't long before he started seeing Claudia behind Mom's back. She was already pregnant by the time my mother passed away, and it still stings knowing that while my mom was fighting for her life, he was out starting a new relationship with someone else. Dad didn't even wait to get married to Claudia. Just a month after Mom's death, he signed the papers right there in court, making it official. But the universe has a cruel way of balancing things, I guess. Claudia's pregnancy was complicated, and both she and the baby passed away during childbirth, leaving Dad with Stacy, her daughter from a previous relationship. That's when it all went downhill for me. It was like Stacy became his new purpose in life, his chance at redemption, and he poured everything into her, acting like she was a fragile little bird who needed constant attention and care. Meanwhile, I was left to fend for myself, like I didn't even exist in this world. Stacy also played the victim, crying about her anxiety when things don't go her way, and Dad buys it every single time. I've tried to talk to him about it, but he shuts me down, saying I'm being too harsh and that I don't understand what Stacy's been through. The truth is, I don't care what she's been through. Like you can click on share more to see if there is a part 2. Update, ditched me BC. He wanted to be a better dad to his favorite stepdaughter, but now he's shocked BC. I moved out and he didn't even notice until this happened. My grandma ripped him apart part 2. All I know is that ever since she came into our lives, I've been pushed to the side like a toy that nobody wants. Every time I try to speak up, Stacy finds a way to twist the situation, making herself look like the one who's suffering. Even Grandma Jean can't stand Stacy. She never approved of Dad marrying my stepmom in the first place, but when Mom died, she tolerated it for Dad's sake. But Grandma has never liked Stacy, mostly because she's not blood and sees right through her manipulation. Grandma tried to talk to Dad about it, just to remind him that I'm his real daughter, but he doesn't listen. He's too wrapped up playing savior to miss Stacy to notice how much he's hurting me. Now, lying here in this cold hospital bed, I can't help but feel all alone. My leg's in a cast, and I've got bills piling up. I can't even rely on my own father to be there for me. How did I get to this point? I try not to think about the accident too much, but it's hard not to. I've always been independent, always tried to handle things on my own, but this is different. I need help, and it sucks knowing that the one person who's supposed to be there for me isn't. I've got friends, sure, but they've got their own lives, you know? Their own problems. What's worse is knowing that my savings are going to run out soon. I've been paying for my college and living expenses on my own since I didn't want to rely on Dad's money, especially not when it comes from Grandma. But now, with hospital bills stacking up, I don't know how I'm going to manage. I've already used most of my savings to cover the initial cost, but I'm going to need more, and fast. Guys, please, I don't know what to do. I mean, I don't, and this is what brings me here. The hospital bills are not going to go away, and neither is this feeling of being completely abandoned by the man who is supposed to have my back. I don't know what to do next. All I know is that my savings are dwindling, and if I don't figure out ways to pay for all this, I'm going to be in a lot more trouble than just a broken leg. I'm starting to not understand how I should go about handling it. At this point, I don't know. I'm so lost. I'm going to turn to you guys for advice. What should I do next? I could really use some suggestions right now, so maybe please drop a comment down below. That'd be cool. Update number 1. Hey guys, it's Denise, and I'm here again. So, it's been 5 days since my initial post, and I'm just happy to tell you that things have somewhat improved. I didn't think I'd be able to get through it on my own, but it turns out I didn't have to. After reading all your comments and suggestions, I decided to do something I hadn't initially considered. I asked my aunt for a bit of help. Yeah, I know she's my dad's sister, and though we're not super close, I figured she might understand the situation better than anyone. When I reached out to her, I wasn't expecting much. My aunt is a no-nonsense type of woman, and I thought she would just give me a lecture about being independent. Or something, I don't know, but to my surprise, she was actually willing to help. I explained everything to her, from the accident to how my dad ditched me for Stacy, and she immediately asked how much money I needed to cover the bill. I was so relieved, I didn't even expect her to be so open about it. But I should have known better, she was always more supportive than my father ever was. You know what I didn't expect, though? My grandmother stepping in. I thought my aunt would help me out, and that would be the end of it. But apparently, word got back to Grandma Jean, and when she found out what was going on, she was furious. She practically stormed into the hospital the next day, talking about how my dad was an embarrassment and how she wasn't going to let him get away with this. She immediately settled the bill without a second thought and told me to focus on my recovery, saying she would take care of the rest. I'm not going to lie, having my grandma come in and handle everything was a huge weight off my shoulders. I didn't even realize how much stress I had been carrying around until it was lifted. It's not just about the money, it's about finally feeling like someone in my family has my back. My dad may have chosen to run off with Stacy for some stupid reason, but at least my grandma still sees me as her granddaughter, someone worth fighting for. Right now, I'm focusing on my recovery. The physical pain is still there, but it's manageable. I'm trying to take things slow, day by day. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel completely alone in all this. Grandma has been coming to see me every day, bringing me food platters and making sure the nurses are on top of things. It's been comforting in a way I didn't expect. But there's a storm brewing. Grandma is angry. She hasn't said it outright, but I can see it in her eyes and the way she talks about my father. She's been muttering under her breath about how he's useless and how he's throwing his life away by catering to Stacy's whims. Honestly, I don't know what's going to happen when Dad gets back from the retreat. Grandma's the one who controls the family money, and I can't help but think she's going to take action. She's never liked Stacy or the way my dad has treated me since Claudia came into the picture. Now that Stacy's manipulation is affecting more than just me, it feels like Grandma has had enough. I'm not sure what comes next. Part of me is worried about the fallout when Dad returns and has to face Grandma's wrath, but another part of me feels a little hopeful, like maybe, just maybe, this is the wake-up call he needs. Maybe he'll realize how he's been neglecting me while chasing after Stacy's fake crises. Either way, I know one thing for certain, I'm not going to sit around and wait for him to change. I have my own life to focus on, and with Grandma and my aunt stepping in, I finally feel like I have a support system I can rely on. Like you can click on share more to see if there is a part 3. Final update, ditched me BC. He wanted to be a better dad to his favorite stepdaughter, but now he's shocked BC. I moved out and he didn't even notice until this happened. My grandma ripped him apart part 3. So for now, I'm just going to take it easy, focus on healing, and see how things unfold. When my dad comes back, I'll keep you guys updated on whatever happens. Update number 2, hey everyone, it's me again. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and a lot has happened, though not in the way I expected. After everything that went down, I knew I could not stay at my dad's house anymore, not that he ever even noticed I was gone. It wasn't like I was waiting for him to come back from that ridiculous retreat with Stacy and suddenly care about what's going on in my life. So when Grandma suggested I move in with her, I didn't hesitate. The day I was discharged from the hospital, Grandma came to pick me up. She didn't just take me home, though. She had already arranged for my stuff to be picked up and moved back to her place while I was still recovering in the hospital. I didn't even have to lift a finger. It was like she had planned it all out, knowing full well that my father would not bother checking in on me. And you know what? He hasn't. It's been a full week since he and Stacy got back from the retreat, and I haven't received so much as a text asking where I am or how I'm doing. It's like I've disappeared from his life completely, and he doesn't even care. I'll admit, at first it hurt. I guess a part of me was still holding on to some hope that maybe, just maybe, when he got back and found out I wasn't at home, he would start to worry. But as the days passed, it became pretty evident that I was wrong. He's so wrapped up in Stacy and her endless mental crises that he hasn't even noticed I'm gone. Honestly, I'm starting to feel more indifferent about it. What does it say about him as a father if he can't be bothered to notice that his own daughter is no longer living under his roof? As for Grandma, her rage has only gotten worse. She's been holding back, probably for my sake, but I can sense it clearly in the way she talks about my father and how she did not raise him to be such a useless man. She's been muttering things about how he's lost his marbles and how Stacy has him completely under her thumb. I can't blame her. I mean, how could I when I feel the exact same way? But Grandma is not the type to let things slide. She's planning to confront my father, and I know it's not going to be pretty. Living with Grandma has been different in a very good way. I finally feel like I'm in a place where I'm not constantly competing for attention or fighting to be seen. It's peaceful here, and even though I'm still recovering, I feel more at ease than I ever did in my dad's house. Grandma has been incredibly supportive, making sure I have everything I need and even helping me get back on my feet financially. It's like she's trying to make up for all the years my dad neglected me, and while it doesn't ease the pain, it does help. Right now, I'm just trying to focus on moving forward. I've decided to take some time off from college to fully recover, both physically and mentally. It's not an easy decision, but it feels like the right one. I need to figure out what I want for my life, separate from the chaos of my dad and Stacy. With Grandma by my side, I finally feel like I have the space to do that. I'll keep you guys posted on what happens next. Update number 3. Hey guys, I know a lot of you have been waiting to see how the confrontation went. I'm sorry to make you wait this long. It's been about a month since my last update, and as you might have guessed, things have taken a sharp turn. I've been trying to process everything that's happened, and it's still a little surreal, but I'll just lay it all out there. So remember how I mentioned that Grandma was planning to confront my dad? Well, she didn't waste any time. The very next day after my last update, she called him over to the house. It was intense, to say the least, as Grandma did not hold back for a second in calling my dad out on his irresponsible behavior. As soon as he started, Dad, being the person he's become, immediately went into defensive mode. He tried to justify his actions, saying that he was doing what he thought was right by prioritizing Stacy because of her fragile mental health. He even had the nerve to suggest that I was partly to blame for the accident, because according to him, I had been careless. Well, that stung. Here I was, barely out of the hospital and recovering from injuries that could have been far worse, and my own father was twisting the narrative to make it seem like I had somehow brought this onto myself. It was a new low, even for him. But Grandma wasn't having any of it. She gave him an ultimatum: either choose his real family, me, or his stepdaughter. It was one of those moments where he could have chosen either way, but my dad, in all his stubbornness and straight-up delusion, laughed. He called the whole thing silly and walked out, acting like it was some kind of joke. I think that's when reality hit him, how far he had gone. The man I once called Dad was so deep in Stacy's manipulation that he couldn't even see the reality in front of him. For a while after the confrontation, things were strange. Grandma was waiting for Dad to finally realize what was on the line, but he didn't budge. He didn't reach out or try to make amends. He did nothing. He just carried on with his life, oblivious to how close he was to losing everything. We still waited, thinking to give him one last chance, but nothing changed. Finally, after what felt like weeks of silence, Grandma made her decision. She disowned him. And she didn't just stop there, she kicked him out of the house. You see, what my dad had conveniently forgotten was that the house he was living in wasn't his, it was Grandma's. She owned it and had every right to kick him out. She made it clear that he and Stacy were no longer welcome. He seemed shocked, like he didn't actually believe she would go through with it, but she did. What happened next? Dad came back to Grandma's house later that day, absolutely begging her to reconsider. He swore up and down he would change and promised he'd be a better father. But by then, it was too late. She told him to get lost. And scram, and warned him that if he showed his face around us again, she would call the law. It sounds harsh, but after everything that's happened, it seemed fair. I thought that would be the end of it, but Dad did not give up. A few days later, he showed up at my college, of all places. I don't know how he found out where I was, but he did. He must have been desperate. I was leaving class when I saw him standing by the entrance, looking disheveled and pitiful. He tried to stop me, begging for another chance, saying that he would lose everything. It was uncomfortable and honestly a little terrifying. I didn't know what to do at first, but I knew I could not let him drag me back into his mess. Thankfully, campus security stepped in before this could escalate. After that, Grandma and I decided to take legal action. We got a restraining order against him. It wasn't easy to do to my own father, but it felt like the only way to protect myself from further harassment. I don't want to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when he might show up again, trying to manipulate me back into his life. Please suggest your opinion on this ending in the comments. What do you think? What would you have done? I can't help it, he's hopping from shelter to shelter now and living on the street.